And here we are again. We've made it to another Sunday. By the way, I had my COVID shot yesterday, the pre-COVID. I don't know if you take your shots or not, but this one really whacked me out. Last night I was up most of the night. My arm is like dragging around. I feel like Quasimodo. But anyhow, we're up to show number 26. We have a great guest here we'll be talking to in just a moment. If you like microphones, if you specifically like Shure microphones, if you're a radio guy that wants to make their voice sound great, this is the show for you. So make sure you stick around for it. I want to say hi to my producer and tech wizard, Alexander Knight. Alex, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing great. I am really excited about this microphone conversation. You know how much of a microphone nerd I am, Mitch, so I think it's going to be...
how much of a microphone nerd are you, Alex?
Well, you know, I may have a few microphones over here. We'll get to some microphones, but thanks to everyone for joining us today. This is The Last Angry DJ, the show where we interview everyone from on-air personalities to engineers, sales and marketing people, business owners, and of course, microphone historians, which we're going to get to today. Just a reminder to everyone, if you want to be part of the show, part of our community, if you scan the QR code that you see on this screen here, you can get into Discord. That's the single best way to engage with us on or after the show to continue the conversation. So I'll leave it there for now. But Mitch, let's not waste any time. And who do we got today?
Well, we got me. I'm Mitchell K.C. Hill, old radio guy, and we got you, and we have I guess for lack of a better term, a historian of microphones, particularly from the Shure company. Reach out and say hi to Michael Pettersen. And Michael, how are you, sir?
I'm fine, thanks. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I think I'm the only microphone historian in the world, maybe the only paid one. How about that?
Well, first of all, you have to have enough microphones in your stack to have something to talk about that goes back into time. But what do you do on a regular basis at Shure, at least currently? I know you've had a number of different jobs there.
Yeah, what do I do? Well, I do a lot of writing. I do like a weekly internal blog about Shure history. I do tours of our plant. We have a archive where we have one of every product that we've ever made. We have a museum. So we do tours for industry people. I do blogs and podcasts like this as well. I scan eBay for things that maybe we don't have. that happens every now and then. I'm also involved in the charitable side of Shure. Shure is an interesting company, is that though we are a for-profit company, we're basically run for the benefit of charity. And so I get involved in that aspect as well, which is primarily usually giving product away. We give monetary funds as well, but product away to not-for-profits. So and when weird calls and weird letters come in, they don't know what they do. They always come to me.
Michael, do you ever get a letter from a podcaster saying, is it okay to pick up an MV7 and hold it in your hands? My answer would be no, please don't do that.
Yeah, that would be handled by our application engineering department. Fortunately, we have a wonderful application engineering group that's around the world, and they take those type of calls like that. But another thing I get involved in, for example, I advise movies on the vintage microphones and if they're proper for the time period and so forth. So I advised on Bohemian Rhapsody and Oppenheimer and the Elvis movie that came out last year, and then there's a new one coming out about Michael Jackson. So I get calls on a regular basis, usually from the prop people. You know, is this right? What could we use?
And speaking of Michael Jackson, that was his Shure mic was his preferred vocal mic.
Yeah. Quincy Jones started using the SM7 on him for the Thriller album, and I think he uses it for the future. I don't know, but there are photographs of Quincy and Michael doing Thriller where it's the SM7.
Now, you'd think that Michael would have a huge vocal range, and the mic needs to be able to handle that. Do you think he's more suitable to a dynamic versus a condenser? Is that why he did that?
Yeah, I don't know if really he can do that. That's where the art of microphone selection into. You really just have to try different things. I know one of the things that they do with Mick Jagger is that they'll record him with a condenser mic, typically like a U47 and an SM7, and then during the mix down, they'll listen and see which track sounds better at that instant. So a lot of times it's just try it and see if you like it.
And the other thing they do in a recording session is sometimes they mix two microphones together, which is a really strange combination. So if you hear something weird going on, it might be that. But I'm a big fan of Shure. I know that Alex is a fan of Shure. And the reason that people in broadcasting, and I'm definitely a broadcasting guy, Alex is more of a tech guy, is that it's your axe. It literally is adjusting the quality of your voice and how does it sound. Now, right now I'm using a condenser mic, and that's fine. But back in the 70s when AM was king, we were either using like an RE16 or 635A, something we could beat the records over and not break it. But when we made the switch to Shure, I was very pleased because it was a much more natural sounding microphone. And if you go really way back, wasn't Shure one of the first companies to create a front addressed microphone, which really made that classic SM70, 75, 78?
Oh, you mean the original Unidyne, the Elvis mic,
yes,
the
Unidyne
cage mic, the one that's your logo? Yeah, that came out, there you go. That's the smaller version. So there was a larger version of that came out in 1939. And what was unique about that was the world's first moving coil microphone. Some people call them dynamic moving coil, same thing. That was directional, but with only one element. They had made directional ones before, but it's two elements. And so this young 23-year-old engineer working for us named Ben Bauer figured out how to make it directional, a cardioid, with one element. And that was a huge breakthrough. The smaller version, like Alex is showing there, came out in 1951. So that's so Unidyne 1 is the larger version. Unidyne 2 is the smaller version, and we still make versions of the Unidyne 2 today.
But I guess the big move for most microphone manufacturers, at least for broadcasting, went from ribbon microphones to dynamic with the single cartridge, as you were saying. What was the impetus for making that kind of a switch?
As far as ribbons are great sounding. They get that big, DJ announcer's voice. But the problem with a lot of ribbons is that they're fairly fragile. It's a corrugated ribbon in there. If you blow into it, they can stretch. When they get stretched and get floppy, they don't sound really good. So
you don't want to turn on 48 volts phantom power can destroy.
Yeah, you don't want to turn on 48 volt phantom power as well. And you also had to have really big magnets in them just to get the power output. I was once doing a lecture at the BBC. God, this is probably in the 80s. And they had a special, really large ribbon mic that was made for them. And the guy who owned it had it on his desk. He said, now don't get too close with that with your wristwatch. This is when wristwatches were mechanical. And he took a paper clip. And he basically dropped the paper clip. And the paper clip was about a foot away from the microphone. And when it got down to the microphone, it took a right angle and went right into the microphone. That's how strong the magnets were. So... And magnets are expensive as well, right? So ribbons had problems, and they're still around. They still sound great, but if you want something that's durable, moving coil is far more durable.
When I think of a ribbon, by the way, I turned my mic down a little bit. They're complaining that I'm too loud.
Okay.
So if you notice anything, Alex, I turned it down a little bit. I Am Fatness said that I'm too loud. I'm trying to remember who that is. I think that's a very familiar name. But anyhow...
That's a running joke on the show, by the way, that Mitch is too damn loud.
Well, it's mostly the presentation, and these are radio guys, so he's always talking like this.
Yep.
But anyhow, it's interesting, all the different mics. The old classic 77DX from RCA, that was sort of like the epitome of a visual of the capsule type microphone. That's the one that looks like a big contact or a big. Don't tell me you have one there, Alex. You have that look on your face like you have one in front of you.
If he has,
he's got that smirk on his face.
They're worth a fortune.
Yeah, they are. I found one in the closet at the radio station I worked at. It was like abandoned. But unfortunately, I stole it from there, and then somebody stole it from me. But what are you
sorry
to
hear that.
So what were the big changes in microphone tech through the years? I mean, since you're the historian, how far back can we go with Shure as far as old stuff to new stuff?
So if you want to stick with Shure, the first microphones that we started manufacturing ourselves were in 1932. Wow. And we made carbon microphones back then, and we also made really high-end recording microphones back then as well. In fact, our very first microphone that we advertised was a Model 42 condenser mic for recording studios, and that was probably today's dollars, maybe a $4,000 mic, perhaps. So we did carbon and carbon and condenser microphones for the first couple of years. Then around 34 or 35, we added crystal microphones. And if your listeners don't know about crystal microphones, I'll give you a really short explanation because they're really cool. So there's a substance called a Rochelle salt. And it basically, if you take a small sliver of it, about the size of your fingernail, for example, and you hold down one end and you flex the other end, you get an electrical signal out of it. And you can actually make microphones and phonograph cartridges and earphones out of these crystals. They were pretty amazing. In fact, I brought with, just so you show you, I have a crystal microphone that I have here in my very small collection, but it's such a cool looking mic, I want to show it to you.
Oh, no, that's Art Deco. Supreme.
Isn't that great?
Wow.
That's a model 701D Shure crystal microphone from 1938.
That's stunning.
Is it powered?
No, it's just basically the power is the crystal itself. It's a piezoelectric. And we have the problem with crystals, salt crystals, is if they get wet, they get too humid, they basically stop working. They like salt, they dissolve. But if you find crystal microphones that are still working, they sound pretty darn good. So we were doing those, and then the dynamic microphone came about. So in 1939, we brought out our first ribbon microphone, but we also brought out our first moving coil microphone. And that was possible because magnets started to get, I should say, less expensive than they were. So we've done condensers, crystals, carbons, ribbons, and moving coils all the way since the 1930s. And we still do most of those today. We don't do crystals anymore. We don't do carbons anymore. But we certainly do ribbons, and we still do moving coils, and we still do condensers.
Wow.
And Michael, I got a question. I got a question for you about the 55SH. Now, I was trying to find out what capsule is in this microphone. Now, I originally thought it was an SM58 or some tuned version of it because I compared it to an SM58, and it sounds very similar to my ears, but not exact. And I was just running it, I didn't do any critical listening through headphones, just running it through a PA. But to me, it sounded like the 58 was a little more muddy in the low mids, and this was slightly clearer. So it's clearly not identical.
Right. So what you got to, let's talk about, at Shure we refer to the engine. The engine is what's inside the microphone. So the first moving coil engine was called a Unidyne 1, and that was the one that was a single element moving coil with a magnet. Unidyne 2 is what you were just holding up in your hand there. That's the Unidyne 2, and that is just simply a smaller version. It's about 66% the size of the first one, and we made it smaller because television producers saying, we like the Unidyne 1, but it's too big on television, make it smaller. And then in 1959, we brought out the Unidyne 3. Now, the Unidyne 3 is the SM58, the SM57, 545, 565, even the SM7. Still, the acoustical network inside is basically the same. But now, because the magnets have gotten stronger, you could make the coil smaller. You could make it an end-fire microphone as well. So the SM58 and the Unidyne 2, which SM58 is Unidyne 3, the 555SH is a Unidyne 2, but they all go back to the Unidyne 1. So there is a similarity inside there without them being exactly the same.
Right.
So it's not an SM58, it is a Unidyne 2 capsule inside there, which was the predecessor to the SM58.
Interesting. Okay, so they share some kind of lineage in DNA. Obviously.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The SM58 is a grandchild, 55SH is the parent, and then the grandparent is the Unidyne 1.
Yeah, and you mentioned the SM7. Now, of course, a lot of people, that don't know microphone history probably now are more familiar with the SM7B. Now, my understanding, hopefully you can clarify this for our audience, but my understanding is that the B stands for broadcast, and it had something to do with the change with the change of the microphone, so it would be more resilient to RF. Is that correct?
Not really. So here's the story. So the SM7 came out in 1973, stayed the same until 1999, where we brought out the SM7A. We used A just because we wanted to distinguish it from the original one. And what we did with the A was we added in a humbucking coil inside of it because radio stations were getting rid of paper copy, and they started reading copy off of CRT tubes. And if you got the microphone a little bit close to a video monitor, it would buzz. So we added, so the SM7A was basically improved with that moving coil. And then the SM7B came out in 2001. B just was did not broadcast, it's just the next letter that was available. And we added that big windscreen on it. And we added that big windscreen at that time for one purpose. We used to make a microphone called the SM5. And there were radio people around the world that, oh, that's the best microphone you ever made, and go on and on and on. It was nothing but a Unidyne 3 inside of it, a Unidyne 3 engine with a really big fat foam windscreen on it. Now, we never sold a lot of SM5s because broadcasters, radio stations would buy 5 or whatever, and they would take such good care of them, they never bought any other ones. So there was a limited market on that. But we kept saying to people, oh, you got to bring it back. So we decided to, what if we made the SM7 look like the SM5? And that's why we put that big fat windscreen on there, and
that's funny.
It worked.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of that windscreen on there, if you've ever worked on a radio station in the 70s, that windscreen would get very skanky.
Oh, yeah.
Because you'd have like cigarette smoke and somebody's ham sandwich for lunch, and you could see everything, anything that was thrown at that mic for the past 4 hours.
Yeah.
And I used to spray it with Lysol, and then the engineer caught me doing it and said, "Don't do that. You're going to blow it up." But yeah,
it's a dynamic microphone. You're not going to blow it up. They could have removed it and simply washed it in warm water, soapy water. It would have been fine.
I was going to touch that thing. That thing needed super fun to keep it clean. But anyhow, microphones, they have a very unique odor to them. So it's, at least in the radio business, because some of the DJs used to smoke like a chimney when they were on the air. So cool. And that's the one I'm most familiar with, the 7. As a radio mic. And then for performing artists, it was the SM57, 58?
58's got the ball. 58's got the ball. 57 does not have the ball.
Right.
That's the only
the
difference.
Unidyne ball.
Yep. That's the only difference is the ball grill. And the 57s have been used on the President of the United States from Johnson in 1965 all the way through Biden now.
It's really interesting.
Now, I heard a rumor.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Mitch.
I heard a rumor that some of those 57s that the president uses are not really 57s. They're mics with something else inside them. I think a Sheps or something like that. I guess you would know if they ever did that.
Yeah, I'm not aware.
They weren't really Shure microphones.
Yeah, we don't have control of them. They can do pretty much what we want. Nothing I've ever seen looks like that. But you just, it's Washington.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a rumor. That's a rumor. Some of my guys in the know say that's not really what
I haven't seen it. It could be, but they own 400 of them, so
400?
Yeah, 400.
Yikes.
About 400 SM57s.
And Michael, you talked about SM58s and 57s, and obviously I think a lot of people know that the SM58s are more commonly used on vocals, but when I look at old footage, old photos and old videos, there were back in the 60s and even the 70s, I did see more people using 57s, but now I almost never see 57s being used for vocals. And the 57 in modern recording times, in a lot of recording studios and even live use, the 57 has become more synonymous as the perfect microphone for a guitar amplifier. If you want that crunch, it's great on, for anything, any kind of guitar amplifier. And also a lot of people use it on the snare mic, as a snare mic on their drum set as well. I don't know how that started. I don't know if it was one engineer that popularized it. Do you know sort of like what the time frame was in history? Like, why did the 57 become the amp mic and the 58 become the vocal mic?
I can give you theories, because none of this stuff is ever written down, right? I can tell you that there was... there was a microphone that preceded the SM57 called an SM56. I don't know if you've ever seen that or not.
No, I haven't.
It's basically a pistol grip version of the SM57. So it's got the stand mount and the shock mount in it, like that. And that came out first. And during the 1967, 68, there was a sound company out in San Francisco that bought 50 of those, and they started using them for the Monterey Pop Festival and all that stuff that was going on in San Francisco. And they basically, the Unidyne 3s at the time, they really worked good for gain before feedback. And there's photos of Jimi Hendrix using it, and there's photos of the Doors using it, and pretty much everybody back then. So that kind of got it looked on the map. And it looks, if you just see the top part of it, it looks like a 57. And then you see the pistol grip of it on the bottom of it. So that kind of got the 57 going. The 57 also was really popular in the mid-70s on Saturday Night Live. You know, that's where everybody performed, and you saw them. And they were always 57s with the can-shaped A2WS cylindrical windscreen on it. The only reason that was done is that Lorne Michael happens to like the way it looked. He liked the way it looked better than the 58, so that's what we're going to use.
That's funny.
And then, of course, the rumors start. Oh, it sounds better than the 58. It's the same engine. It's nothing. The difference is the ball or the non-ball. So a lot of times things get chosen for some reasons, and then the rumor mill starts, and it comes out to be lots of different reasons. Why is
I was going to say, doesn't the 57, 58 have a little bump in the around 4K, 3K to give it a little sparkle?
Yes, that was done. That the first Unidyne 3, which came out in 1959, which is a 545, had that bump on it. Interestingly enough, Ernie Seeler, who was our engineer, did it. He hated that bump. It was a flaw as far as he was concerned. He wanted a flat response microphone, and he could not get rid of it. And so we kept it. Thank God we did, because that's pretty much the Shure sound.
But you could pull that 57 out today, and it's the problem solver. It sounds great. You can do interviews with it. You can do performances. It's just the go-to mic, and what is it? Level before feedback. It's just all in all. It's probably
game before feedback. Yeah.
Game before feedback.
Yep.
It's just all in all. It's just a great microphone.
Yeah,
it's just great for every situation.
You know, magazines, either e-magazines or paper magazines. You know, if you're on a desert island and you had one microphone to take, this 57 is always the one that they choose. You know,
what's your favorite microphone, by the way? A question is being asked by Robert Shoji.
My favorite.
What is your favorite mic, Michael?
Well, is that like the way it looks, the way it sounds?
I'll leave it up to you to decide.
Well, come on, man.
I know that one is gorgeous.
You got to love that. I keep telling our design people, we need to bring this out as a USB mic or something.
I need that microphone in my life. I've never seen that before. I want.
It's hard to find.
It's beautiful.
It's called a 701D. And if you find them on eBay, they're rare. They're going to cost you $500 to $700 probably, and that's not working. That's just you're paying for the
How would you describe the sound profile of that mic?
It's very bright. It's got a pretty good low end, but crystal microphones tend to emphasize everything above 1K. So if you listen to it, it's a bright sound. Probably too bright for today, but back then, PA systems were new. They didn't have a lot of high end, so you wanted your microphone to emphasize that.
Makes sense.
And also the high end was used for intelligibility with two-way radio. So that peaky type of sound was really what it was. And of course, harmonica players like crystal microphones too, because if you overblow those, you overblow those, and you get this distorted sound that everybody, oh, I love that. Our history has lots of examples of things that we brought out for one reason, and then the world said, oh no, it's really for this. And in hindsight, we look like geniuses, and actually we were just at the right place at the right time with the product.
What's the microphone the Blues Brother uses to do the harmonica solos?
That's
shaker?
called the Green Bullet. That's the 520D. You can also see that when you watch reruns of MASH. That is Radar's microphone that he talks to the camp at. So that came out in 1949, and it was designed for inexpensive PA systems, and it was designed for two-way police and fire. And within 5 or 6 years, harmonica players started taking the microphone off the bottom of it because it fit in the hand so well, overblowing it. It was a high impedance mic, so it'd go right into the guitar amp and just got that distorted sound. We really didn't realize it was a harmonica microphone for decades.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, and
how do you decide what microphone is needed out there? Because God knows you've had enough time to build every conceivable microphone with every conceivable technology. You get in a big room somewhere with all the tech guys and say, we need that Chrysler building mic, or we need this.
We stay in touch with end users, particularly professional sound engineers of all sorts, and they'll come with us with issues. They want to try to do something like this or that. Sometimes technology changes as well, where all of a sudden we couldn't do something. For example, there's a way now of using laser welding instead of adhesives to do things inside of microphones, and that's allowed us to get rid of adhesives, which makes things lighter. And because you get microphones move millionths of an inch, right? So if you remove little tiny bits of mass, it changes the way they sound. So sometimes, Mitch, it's actually technology changes and that come around. We go, oh, we could do this now. There's an interesting thing. I mentioned Ben Bauer before, who in 1939 or 38 developed the Unidyne microphone. In his lab notebooks, which we have, all these handwritten lab notebooks, he had all the math in it in 1938 to do these array microphones, which are now put into the ceilings, and are used for conferencing rooms. And so he knew how to do it back in 1938, but the technology didn't allow it till the MEMS came out. And then with MEMS, we could start doing those array microphones. So a lot of times the ideas are there, but you can't make it until certain things change.
Can microphones get better with age? It's one of the questions I'm seeing here.
We keep lab standards of microphones so we can go back and test things. We've really never noticed it, but think about this. You were talking before, people smoke, they spit on them and so forth. Maybe that adds a little bit of mass to the diaphragm. Maybe that changes the screen things by iotas, and maybe it sounds better to your ears. All we can say is this. If your old microphone sounds better than a new microphone, great, use the old microphone. But we've never seen anything that says they get better over the years. They may change, and they may change to your liking, but that's about the best I can say.
And how did you design the MV7 to be the podcasting microphone to end all podcasting microphones? It truly is a genius piece of work.
Yeah, it was, we started with the SM7. We wanted to make something, so the element that's on the engine inside there is not a Unidyne 3, but it took some things from the Unidyne 3. So we tried to come up with a way, could we make a less expensive element that sounded kind of like the Unidyne 3, which we came up with a way of doing that. And then we just added in the interface, which is the USB output. I think the clever thing on it myself is to have the XLR output as well. So now you can come out XLR and USB, which is very clever. And then we basically gave it to people to use, and they came back with criticisms and things, and eventually we modified it. So it started with the SM7 as the inspiration. We knew we had to have a USB output on it, and it's kind of taken off from there.
I know we complained a little bit about on a program called Office Hours that we do. Most of us are familiar with it, and we try to get everybody's level at minus 24 or whatever. And the SM7 was sometimes a little hard to get right to that point. Yep. And then you guys came out with this little pod that could go in line, that could boost that level a little bit higher on that mic, or maybe on a dynamic mic that's a favorite, whatever else. So it seems like Shure is always innovating something. It's not just microphones, folks. The headphones I'm wearing or earphones I'm wearing, these are 205s from Shure. They're very trusty.
And Mitchell, I think you're talking about that's the MV, forget them, the X2U something. It's a little USB-C.
The X2U is a little pod. Yep. And now we have the SM7 with the preamp built into it. That's called the SM7DB, which is added the gain. So let me give you my high horse here just for a second.
Yeah, please.
So because when the SM7 was being used by radio stations and by recording studios, no one ever complained about the gain. When people started complaining about the gain is when it got into the hands of, I'll just call them less experienced users. And, how come you don't have more gain in that? And we said, well, let's never change that. Now, what happened was, if you go back into like 1980s and 1990s, remember Mackie mixers? Right?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, and
Bob Mackie.
Yeah, and they killed, right? They just brought out these mixers for $500, and everybody was using them and so forth. Now, one of the things that they did to make the mixer quieter was they took about 20 dB of gain out of the mic preamps, because they realized that if you were going to use an SM58 and you were going to be screaming into your lungs in it, you didn't need to have 70 dB of gain in the mic preamp. So people started making mixers with lower mic gains in them, because they expected you to be using a microphone really close and screaming really loud. That's fine when you're doing rock and roll.
Right.
But now, if you take an SM7 and you go in there and you're speaking at voice level, you want that additional 20 dB gain 100%. That was taken out to make the mixers quieter. And so we were getting crap for nothing that we did. And we just said, get yourself a decent mic preamp that gives you 70 dB a gain, and you're going to be fine.
I have to coach.
Do you ever consult with people like Mackie on their VLZ preamps that you're talking about and say, hey, be better if you did this for our microphones?
No.
Good answer.
And not because we did, but basically, some people want to listen to you, some people don't want to listen to you, so.
Michael, I have to coach people all the time about this kind of stuff because, I also sell Shure products and the SM7B is such a popular microphone. That's really interesting that you said that about that whole history with Mackie and the preamps because we absolutely have gone the other way now where products, a lot of companies have woken up to the fact that these low output dynamic mics need a lot of gain. You need a high gain preamp with lots of headroom in order to bring the level, because we're now using these microphones differently. A lot of people are using it for spoken word, especially if you have a really quiet voice. If you're talking like this, you can't get, if your microphone preamp goes up to 50 dB, you can't get enough out of that. And so I'm so happy to see companies finally waking up to that fact that they need to engineer these preamps differently, because otherwise you get nothing but noise if you run a microphone preamp at the max, that it's designed to operate at. It doesn't sound good.
Right, and there was nothing wrong with Mackie mixers. They were great for the thing they were used for. But people started using them for things that they weren't designed for, and that is spoken word. It was never designed for spoken word. And when you started doing that, all of a sudden you needed that 20 dB a gain that was left out because it wasn't needed, and it made the mixer noisier too. So,
how do you feel about? I know the broadcast people must do this. About processing on a mic, a little compression, a little limiting. There are some schools of thought that there should be nothing done to the mic, no EQ, no compression. But I'm a radio guy, and I gotta give it a little bump here and a little twist there to get it's because I'm crafting it's my voice, it's my axe. You'll probably notice that both Alex and I have a little processing on our mics. How do you feel about it? What's your personal feeling?
Radio stations want to have a sound, right? They want to be able. So people are going, scanning the dial or whatever people do these days. I was going to say turning the dial, but that doesn't happen anymore. And they want, that's the sound I want. There's a station here in Chicago called WFIL. All they do is classical music, and they use basically no compression at all because they're doing classical music. They don't want to make the soft louder and the louds softer, right? And so they basically use, believe it or not, our Shure SM81 microphone, which is a flat response condenser with a big whopping windscreen on it. And they use that for their voiceovers. Now, for them, it sounds absolutely spectacular. But it's a very quiet station. If you're scanning the dial, it's very easy to go right past it because they don't stick out. So I think you're trying to paint a picture. And, a picture is not a photograph. And if adding that compressing and so forth is the picture you're trying to make, go ahead.
As an early disc jockey in the 70s, I didn't have a lot of money. I was literally in high school, and I came across a Shure product called the Level Lock. I think you have an actual number for it, but it was a little box. It was part of a series of devices that Shure made. That little Level Lock did a great job. It sounded great, for what it was, and I ended up sneaking it into the processing on a radio station. And the engineer was pissed at me for doing it. But the program director said, "What did you do to the mic? It sounds 10,000 times better." I said, "It's a little compressor. It was no EQ. It was just a little compressor." And you could smack the hell out of it.
M62V it was called. And those things have become, look on eBay now, and they're $1,000 because people are using them now for recording purposes, miking drums and all kinds of weird things, not like it was originally designed for, but apparently it creates a certain sound, and those things are really, really hot now.
Michael, could you talk about
go ahead.
I just want to bring in some listener questions in here because people are asking. Could you talk about the two newer microphones in the Shure product lineup? People want to know about the new SM4, and they also want to know about the Nexodyne microphone.
The SM4 I literally saw last week for the first time, so I wish I could talk intelligently about it. I can tell you it's a large diaphragm condenser microphone at a price point it's about $200. I haven't heard it. I don't really know much more about that. The Nexodyne is interesting. The Nexodyne took us about 7 or 8 years to develop. It really was a huge breakthrough in dynamic microphone design. And what it allowed us to do was create a dynamic microphone with a good cardioid pattern that had very little proximity effect. Now, a lot of people like the proximity effect on the SM58. Proximity effect is when you get, there you go, when you get close to the microphone, the bass builds up. But there's a lot of people who don't know how to use a microphone well, and when they get too close to it, it gets muddy. And so this was our attempt to make a cardioid, really good cardioid microphone with a cardioid pattern, very tight pattern, but without the proximity effect, and to really reduce handling noise as well. And there's a lot of patented technology in there. There are certain things in there that if I told you about, I would get fired. So I really can't mention that. But is it going to replace the 58? No. But if it's something where you say, I really like the 58 pattern, but I really have too much proximity effect, and I really want less handling noise, Nexodyne should be something you look at.
Cool.
Yeah, it took a long time, and it's a very, very clever design.
I think the handling noise thing is definitely something that, I mean, Shure microphones have historically always been incredible, and I can't say the same for a lot of other companies that make that type of stuff. But the other interesting thing that you were saying about proximity effect is something that, you know, I battled that for years, trying to coach people to, not just for spoken word, but even singers. I mean, good singers have good mic technique, and they know how to work a microphone. You look at any good singer with a powerful voice, you know, they're going to hit that high note. They're going to back off the microphone. If they want to get intimate, they'll get close. But having that controlled proximity, or at least reducing the excessive bass buildup as you get super close, for a lot of people that do punk and metal music, I mean, they just eat that microphone. Sometimes people cup the microphone, and then it turns into an omnidirectional, and then all hell breaks. Bad omni. Oh yeah, bad omni, and then all hell breaks loose, right? So I'm glad that you guys are doing that. It's very interesting because, you know, Shure, companies like Shure, you guys are a really old company, and it's really cool to see an older company like this try new things, to not be afraid of innovating and getting, you know, just not resting on their laurels. You guys will continue to obviously make the classics that everybody wants and use. Those are going to be staples, but it's really cool to see these designs changing and trying out new things. And one thing I learned recently, I didn't know you guys do beta testing with people. I understand that the Nexodyne was beta tested with a lot of performers too.
Anything that's designed for the pro audio market, you know, we'll definitely go out and do a lot of beta testing on that, and listen to what the people say. You know, the biggest portion, we won't cover this today, but the biggest portion of our business now is wireless microphones. You know, as far as dollars, far more than wired microphones, because wireless microphones are more expensive, just in general. But we do tons and tons of beta testing with end users, sometimes years in advance before you ever see them.
And it's not just in the wireless microphone world. Now that things have changed with the FCC repacking the frequencies, you got to have a computer in there to tell you what frequencies are available, because you can walk into an arena and all kinds of hell can break loose.
Do you ever? And of course, the other thing that probably a lot of listeners don't know is the laws are different from country to country. So if you're doing a tour in the United States, don't take that system to France, because it's not the same laws.
I got to say, Michael, as someone who's, you know, I rent pro audio gear to people all the time, and a lot of people that come in my store don't know anything about wireless. And I had somebody, I've had this on many occasions, where somebody says, I'm going to rent something, I'm going to take it to Europe. I said, good luck with that. You'll have a paperweight. And they don't realize the differences in the law. They had no concept that there are different laws with frequencies, and you can run into trouble. And I always have to tell people, no, you got to plan this in advance. You got to go to that local rental shop and rent it
in that country
that you're going, in the city that you're going to.
Right. Yep.
Well, the first thing I would tell anybody buying a wireless system of any kind is take it off the default setting, because some people are just too darn lazy to, and they all have it on the same frequency. Go in and change it. Take a little time. Live a little. You know, experiment. Go to different places on the dial.
So here's a question for you. Historical questions. Do you know what year we introduced our first wireless microphone?
With Tesla? Nikolai Tesla?
No, it wasn't quite that long, but it was 1953.
Wow.
Was
That's a year before I was born.
Your first wireless microphone. And The transmitter itself had 6 miniature vacuum tubes inside of it. This is before transistors were, this is before transistors were widely available. So the receiver was vacuum tubes, which you would imagine is about the size of a big bread box. But the transmitter was 6 miniature vacuum tubes.
Wow.
See, I want to add.
I thought wireless mics were invented in the 80s, but
No.
I want to add something to what Alex was saying earlier about artists working microphones and knowing how to use them properly. Voiceover people and radio people, it's the same thing. And if you have a microphone that you're comfortable with, like I have my throwback U87 behind me here, I know how to play that thing like a Stradivarius.
Yeah, you should. It's your instrument. It's your instrument.
Yeah,
right?
it literally is. And I think that people develop relationships with their microphone, whether it's a Shure, a Neumann, a Schoeps, whatever happens to be, and they learn how to use it, and then they get kind of, there's like a microphone for every person. And maybe that's a good thing, because there's how many different microphone companies are out there. And of course, the big common, go-to microphone companies like Shure, Electro Voice, and here in the U.S. of A. There's a lot of variety, and they all bring a little bit of coloration or some kind of. I still can't get over that thing that looks like a Chrysler building that you have that you keep bringing up. I mean, to me. Like I think some people might actually go for a design over a quality issue, form over function. These days
that happens. That happens regularly. But you're right about the microphone technique. I always tell people, I said, if you want to see someone who work a microphone properly, go back and watch old videos of Frank Sinatra. That guy knew how to use a microphone. That was
a big Neumann tube microphone he had.
Well,
like
but live. But if you ever watch him live. He was just spectacular. He just, he always worked it off to the side, so there never being popping of peas. You'd never hear him breathe. He would work it as back and forth, like Alex was talking about. He was great with his microphone technique.
I was in Memphis once, and I went to Sun Studios, and I think it was at a time where Elvis may have still stepped in there and recorded once in a while. But anyhow. One of the microphones was set up in a corner. It was a corner of Pride, I think. And they said, don't touch that microphone. That's Elvis's mic. I mean, they must have had it set up just a certain way, and maybe it had a few dents on it in just the right place. Who the heck knows?
Yeah.
But it's very interesting how people form associations with a microphone for certain
personal.
Applications.
It's personal.
What other stuff does Shure make that we aren't even thinking about right now?
We mentioned wireless. You mentioned earphones. We make of course, exactly. We make headphones. I've got some Shure headphones on here. We make in-ear monitors, of course. The wireless microphones are for transmitting the microphone signal to the mixing board. But then you've got something to come back, which is the called PSM. You would call it IFB, but we musicians call it in-ear monitoring, so they can hear themselves as well. Let's see, what else are we doing? And lots of conferencing equipment, for meeting rooms and being able to transmit from one place to another. That's a huge business for us. It's interesting that a lot of the people buying this stuff, they have no idea who Shure is. If you're in the industry, like you two guys are, you know who we are. But if you're MasterCard, and you're going to buy a bunch of Shure conferencing microphones, who's this Shure? And so we bring them in and show them our technology. And if you go back and you look at almost any major historical or musical event in the 20th century or the 21st century, there's a Shure microphone there. And it's invisible to you until someone points it out, right? So we could go back and we say, there's Martin Luther King giving I Have a Dream speech. There's a Shure microphone there. Here's Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock. Oh, there's a Shure microphone there. And people outside the industry don't realize it, but that really kind of sells them out. And they go, oh, I guess you've been around for a while. Yeah, so like 100 years, yeah.
So it's sometimes buying a mic is sort of like buying a sports car. You're kind of showing off a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Maybe because of the expense of it or the quality or that great microphone that you have there that you pull out a couple of times.
Yeah.
Do you find that that's an issue with artists and people who they can afford anything, and yet they have this thing or whatever?
So here, the most loyal band in the world to Shure is the Rolling Stones. The Rolling Stones first used Shure Unidyne 3 microphones in 1963. They got signed by Decca Records, and Decca put on this outdoor street concert, and the Stones started using Unidyne 3s. Mick Jagger, on the current tour, 2024, is using Unidyne 3s. Those guys have been loyal to us for 60 years. And you think they could afford anything? Of course they could afford anything, right? And what do they use? The contracts say, got to be Shure SM58s, Shure Wireless. And they were endorsers for us for a short period of time in the 70s. Since the 75, they don't need to endorse anybody, right? They're the Stones. And yet they still use their stuff. I mean, that's that type of loyalty. Roger Daltrey of The Who, he's used 58s.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's used 58s since 1966 when they first came out. And I mean, it's a $100 microphone, or $120 microphone, whatever it is now. And the biggest bands in the world use it.
And by the way, if you see what appears to be a 57 or a 58 super cheap on the internet, it's probably a fake microphone. Sure has done a great job of battling
huge
that gray market material.
Huge problem for us.
But you guys have done your very best, because what happens is that people will buy these look-alike, one-offs or whatever the heck they are, from some third world nation, or maybe from a big nation, who knows. And they'll get the mic and it just sounds bad.
Yep.
And then they'll send it into the Shure company that, hey, our mic just sounds bad. And Shure gets it and says, this isn't our microphone.
This isn't ours.
Some other.
Yeah.
How do you be a good buyer with stuff?
Yeah.
How do you know?
It's really actually pretty simple. You buy from Shure dealers, authorized Shure dealers. And no matter what country you're in, you can find that out, because we have Shure agents in every country. If you call Canada, you'll talk to SF Marketing, and they'll tell you, here's who you buy Shure from. Same thing in the United States. So just go to the source and just say, who are authorized dealers? And if you're right, if you see it, if it looks too cheap to be true, it's because it is too cheap to be true. And Mitch, we're really not concerned so much about the money we lose in the sale. We're concerned about what it does to the brand.
Right.
That's the bigger problem.
Alex, you ever get people walking in with an off-brand mic or a look-alike? I know there's a lot of U87s for $100.
It's a big problem. I mean, because we're like in Canada, we're the dealer for Shure, and I get people that want to we take in trades, right? And we have to be really careful. I'm more inclined to take in trades from something that I know we actually sold already in the past, because I can check serial numbers and stuff like that. I can check purchase history, but it's a real problem, and it's not just a problem for Shure. It's a problem for other big known manufacturers. We have this problem with Neumann. In fact, actually, I have seen people take in trades on Shure SM58s that were fake. Just recently, I ran into this problem with Neumann microphones. The TLM 103 is one of the most popular condenser mics. And now, if you know what you're doing, you know what these microphones look like. Oftentimes, you can spot differences in the design of the basket on the microphone. There are small, sometimes subtle differences, but you have to be very careful and inspect them closely in order to ensure that you're getting a mic that is real. And like Michael was saying too, just make sure that you go to an authorized dealer. I mean, first of all, you're going to get a real microphone, and also you're going to ensure that you get the best sales and after support as well.
Right. Yep.
That's a big part of it too when you're buying products, is making sure you're getting good support after the fact. Because for me, as someone who's in sales and rentals, it's very much about the relationship between us and the customer too. And I like having relationships and getting to know people and know what their background is, and I think that's super valuable. So yeah, just don't buy it from Podunk Boy 56 on the internet.
Yeah, it's a problem, but and you're not going to pay that much more typically. It really isn't that much more.
Exactly.
Well, the problem is we live in a day and age where people are making decisions that's good enough, and they don't realize what kind of mistakes they're making. But they'll make that mistake, and they'll learn a valuable lesson on how to get separated from $100 because they wanted to save $100 or $50, and that's the way it's going to go.
I tell people, buy a 58 and take good care of it, and you'll never buy another one. I've got mine from 1960.
I've got one. It's in a bag. It's been bounced around for years, and it's the mic I always bring out when there's a problem or I need to rescue a situation, or there's one extra mic. It'll fit in there and sound great. It's like the feedback suppression is par excellence. and it sounds great. It's just it's just a great all-around microphone.
I've got one from 1972. From 1972. I've never bought another one.
Well, one of the questions on our panel here is how many 57s and 58s do you sell in a year? I mean, that's a little one out of Jump Street.
I would be fired in a split second if I told you that.
Oh, really? Is that like corporate hoorah?
That is top secret. More than one, less than a billion.
More or less.
That would be. No, that would be my last day at Shure very, very quickly.
Michael,
sorry, folks.
You stole my thunder. I really wanted to give some snarky comment, like more than one. Definitely more than one.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So with the 4 coming out, the condenser mic, that's a bit of an eye raiser.
Yep.
When I saw that in the news like a week ago, it's like it's brand new.
Yep.
I like that, and condenser mics. I know how to work a condenser mic. Alex and I are both using Cousins. We got 414s. They're slightly different, but
good microphone.
We know how to use them. But at the same time, Michael, we don't do this very often, but we're a great beta tester. We're small, we're knowledgeable, we're right on top of things. Please add us to the list here, especially Alex, and because he sells them. So he, any kind of thing you could throw his way would be greatly appreciated.
I'm not involved in that anymore. I'll pass it on to the guys that do it because that's no longer my bailiwick. I did product management back in the 80s, but I no longer do that.
Yeah, but you know somebody. We just know you know somebody. Because you probably know the original Mr. and Mrs. Shure, right?
I
when
did.
They were kicking around.
I did. Mr. Shure. I knew Mr. Shure from 1976 to when he passed away in 1995. Then I knew Mrs. Shure until she passed away in 2016, and she really was almost like a second mother to me. She was really a lovely, lovely person. And about 2 or 3 weeks before she passed away, she called me up one day, and she couldn't come into work anymore. She was too weak, and she just said, I'm not going to be here much longer, and when I'm gone, I want you to continue the history of the company. Will you do that for me? What am I going to say? Right?
You're the legacy.
Can you talk more about that?
I don't want to do that.
Can you talk more about the museum? Because I think a lot of people are not aware that there is an official curated museum by Shure that is being maintained, which I think is very important because like you said, Michael, obviously somebody who's been at the company since the 70s, you've been through a lot of regimes, you've been on a lot of teams, you've seen people come and go. And my worry with a lot of companies that have these types of valuable products and valuable history that impacts so many aspects of our lives is that could easily get lost. And I'm so glad that you're maintaining this history. So tell us about the Shure Museum.
There's 2 aspects of it, Alex. There is, on the first floor, our headquarters are in Niles, Illinois, which is it's a suburb of Chicago. We've always been in Chicago in the area. And on the first floor, we've got what we call the Great Hall, which is basically a miniature museum. There are 4 showcases there, which show you the 4 most important products of our history. There's our Emmy Award, there's our Grammy Award, there's the various awards. And then there's a back wall, which has got far more detail about our history, which is really for people who work there. Stop by every day, read a little bit of section and learn about our history. If I take someone through the tour and our history, it might take 30 or 35 minutes. So that's about that aspect of it. But in the same building, but farther back, is the archive. And the archive is where we have one of every product we've made since 1932, probably sometimes 2 copies of them. And that's like stacks. You've seen with in stacks where they can move the stacks together so they can share spaces. So we've got that there. And we have a large database. And you can go back there and we can put it in the database and we go find, that's on this shelf, go see it there. So when people, hey, I found this microphone in Grandpa's attic, can you tell me anything about it? My guess, and I don't know, I'm going to pick on Apple just for a second, but I'm certain if I found an Apple Macintosh computer from the 1986, for example, and I wrote Apple and said, can you tell me about it? They probably would ignore my email. I'm not certain, but that's my guess. You write Shure a question like that, and we'll go look it up and tell you everything we can about it because we want to keep that history, and we do that via the archives. And that's where we always end the tours. We take people in the archive. Of course, they can only see a tiny, tiny small bit of it, but you'll see microphones in original packaging. You'll see microphones owned by famous people. We just got, just last week, we got a body pack, wireless body pack used by Keith Richards for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
I've got a microphone coming back, a wireless microphone coming back right now from Chris Martin from Coldplay, donated it to us. So we have things like that as well. It's really, really fun. And you know something? I learn something every day. So we have an off-site storage, and this is completely separate. It's a storage facility about 15 miles from Shure. We've got 400 boxes that we packed in 1955, and no one's looked at them since then. And our financial department, rightfully saying, is, why are we paying for these boxes? Do we know what's in them? And of course, not really. So on about a monthly basis, myself and Julie Snyder, who's our librarian and archivist, we go up there and we take out 4 or 5 boxes and we start looking through these things to see what we find. Now, a lot of time we get nothing. But just this last week, for example, we found a box that said engineering drawings, 1940s. And there were the original engineering drawings of the Unidyne and this microphone and everything else, not blueprints, the original pencil drawings on vellum. And so, you know, I get that. I got chills. I just got chills telling you about it. I get chills when I find stuff like that. The last time we were out there, I found a booklet about the wireless microphone industry in 1960. It basically was a snapshot of everybody making wireless microphones in 1960. Most of those companies are long gone and forgotten, but now we've got a document that said, here's who's doing it. Now, here's a question for you. What company, big company, still around today, in 1960 had the most sophisticated wireless microphone? It wasn't Shure, but it's a big company, and it's a Japanese company. I'll give you that.
Audio-Technica.
Sony.
Oh,
Sony.
Really?
They had a very sophisticated wireless microphone system in 1960. It was cool.
And they, back in those days, they were in a UHF band, I guess.
I don't remember. It could have been. I don't remember what band it was in. Yeah. But that's, you know, and that for me is, I mean, I come home for those days and I think, I can't believe they pay me to do this. It's like, it's treasure hunting. It's treasure hunting, right? You know, nah. Ooh, what's this drawing? And you open it up and it's the original Unidyne drawing with, you know, on pencil and vellum. I mean, God. So
well, the fact that you know what you're looking at, that's a credit to your chosen profession.
Well, that's why I'm still on staff, right? Because I can look at that. I know now this is not important. This is important. So and that you only can get from being there for so many years. So you know what to look for.
Well, Michael, we are huge enthusiasts of Shure and the microphones and the history, but also, you know, taking a look under the hood to see what the other intangible facts that make them interesting. And you've brought all of that to us. Thank you so very much. Thank you for your service in archiving all these microphones in the museum. Did it just walk up and knock on the door and come on in? Is that what?
Well, no, it's by invitation only, basically. But you know, you're like, for example, you're in the industry. We could set that up, but it's not open to the public. And I'll close with this. Any listeners, you run across interesting old microphones, be they Shure or not, but particularly if they're Shure, you know, contact me at Shure. It's, you know, my email is petterm@shure.com. Send me a photograph, and I'll be glad to look at it. You might have something I might be interested in.
Well, you truly have a passion for your job, and we have a passion for it too. So thank you very much for bringing that to our show.
You're welcome.
We try to cover a lot of different bases. This is certainly an important one. It'd be like going into a musician's forum and bringing out a Fender bass or something like that. It truly has a lot to do with our industry and our work. So thank you so very much for your contributions.
And I appreciate the invitation.
It was our pleasure.
Great. This was a lot of
Spread
fun.
the word. We like talking to people like yourself. We consider you a microphone curmudgeon.
Yeah.
Can we use that term?
My wife's called me that a few times.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Alex, you have anything else you want to say about this and how people can reach us?
Absolutely, yeah. First of all, thanks, Michael, for coming on the show. This is a ton of fun. I mean, we're nerds. We like to geek out, so this has been great. If you'd like to reach out to the show, you can follow us on social media at The Last Angry DJ across Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and X as well. So all the platforms. Today we are live. We're broadcasting across all those platforms. It's a bit of a new experiment for us. We've been embarking on the last couple of weeks. So we like people to watch the show or listen to the show wherever they want on their own schedule. And of course, we'll have the audio podcast version of this as well available usually the next day. If you prefer that, because you don't have to always look at us. You can just listen to the audio version on your commute to work. That's totally fine. However you want to watch us or listen to us, that's totally fine. You can send us an email by going to thelastangrydj.com/contact. There's our contact form and, of course, the Discord community as well. Again, putting up the QR code on the screen there if you want to join us. If you'd like to show your support for the show, please do that by going to patreon.com/The Last Angry DJ and become a coffee supporter, $2 a month. And that helps us out immensely. And of course, lastly, just if you love this show, share it with somebody you know. If they're into broadcast, if they're into audio and microphones and all that kind of stuff, let them know that we exist, because that's what it's all about. So we appreciate everyone that was in the chat today participating. Mark Giuliani, Shoji, Productions, and I think Jerry Hoyle was in the chat today, and there's probably a bunch of other people that I'm missing here. Too many names to list off, so thank you very much.
I think J.J. McKenna snuck in there.
Oh, J.J.
nickname.
McKenna. Good to see you.
Yeah,
thank
I think that's his. He's got the funky name. These are a lot of people from office hours that are friends. If you ever get a chance, check them out.
Okay.
We're sort of like the cousin to office hours. We're a small cousin, distantly removed. But Alex, thank you very much for doing what you do. Also, it was Alex's idea to bring Michael in, and I'm so happy you did that, because Michael is a spectacular guest. Michael, spread the word. Tell people about your podcast. It's out there forever now. Once it gets out on the internet, you know, long after we're all gone and we're dust, they'll be archived on some Skynet computer.
I will do. We have an internal website at Shure, and once I get the link, I'll be glad to share it internally like that as well.
We'll do that. Thanks so very much for everybody for joining us. We'll be here again next week. Next week, it's the Broadcast Boffins. Alex and I talking about whatever suits our fantasy, and then fancy or whatever. And then the week after that, we got a couple of really cool guests. I can't confirm them just yet, but we're working on that. You know, all that post-Labor Day stuff. You have to be in the U.S. You don't do Labor Day in Canada, right, Alex?
You know, it is a holiday today. Tomorrow, actually, Monday. It is. I should know this, and I don't.
It's
tomorrow.
Know
what holiday?
It's tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Not tomorrow. But anyhow,
it says Labor Day on the calendar. So,
well, that's the legit holiday.
So
thanks everybody for being here. We thank you. We're going to finish up our live broadcast here with this. Be safe out there. Get your COVID shot. Stay away from high fructose corn syrup. And kids, don't play your headphones too loud. You'll be paying for it when you get to be our age.
Agreed.
So watch out. See ya.